What's up, family? Welcome back to the channel. So Trump just hit 100 days back in office, and he went to meet the press for a long interview. And I watched a bit of it, so y'all don't have to. And what I want to do here is not just repeat what he said, but break it down, give you real context, teach, and just have a real conversation on what's going on with the country. And I'm talking economy, immigration, term limits, all of that. So let's get into it. Well, with no further ado, family, now that I preface the conversation, I want to play this clip and then we can have a conversation. So check it out.
Your first 100 days in office. It has been an incredibly busy 100 days. You've signed more than 140 executive orders. You've been focused on the border, the economy, foreign policy. What is your biggest goal in the next 100 days?
Well, I think we're going to see a lot of results. We've already seen them on the border. We have the best border in the history of our country. It was 99.999, and nobody ever thought that was possible. In fact, Biden, if you remember, said he has to get legislation. And I said, no, you just need a new president. And I guess I was right. We have the best border we've ever had. We're doing great on illegal immigration. We are being hit hard by judges that I think they're trying to take away the power of the presidency. I was elected in a massive landslide and a big vote. We won the swing states. We won the popular vote. We won the district votes by tremendous numbers. We won everything. And one of the primary reasons I was elected was to get people out of our country that were allowed. We have prisoners, we have murderers, we have terrorists in our country. We have people from mental institutions that are seriously insane. They all came in through Biden's open border policy, and I was elected to get them out and to seal the border, but to get them out. And we'll have judges, they're activist judges, they're saying, well, you don't have the right to take out murderers and people that you don't even want to talk about. These are really some really bad criminal people, and they're here illegally. So, they talk about your next question will be due process, but they talk about due process, but do you get due process when you're here illegally?
We're going to talk about all of that. We are going to talk about deportation, but I want to start on the economy, sir, which obviously the biggest issue for voters. We got new numbers today, better than expected job numbers.
Much better.
At the same time, the economy shrank in the first quarter. You've been arguing all week that this is President Biden's economy. Is this now your economy, sir?
Well, I think certain aspects of it are. Costs are. I was able to get down the costs, but even that, it takes a while to get them down, but we got them down good. We lost $5 to $6 billion a day with Biden, $5 to $6 billion. And I've got that down to a great number right now in a record time. We're talking about 100 days. But just think of what that is, $5 billion a day we're losing on trade. And we were very tough with China, as you know. We put 145% tariff on. Nobody's ever heard of such a thing. And we've essentially cut off trade relationships by putting that much of a tariff on. And that's okay. We've gone cold turkey. That means that we're not losing. We lost $1 trillion to China. $1 trillion. That means we're not losing $1 trillion when we go cold turkey because we're not doing business with them right now. And they want to make a deal. They want to make a deal very badly. We'll see how that all turns out, but it's got to be a fair deal. But think of it. We were losing $1 trillion. And that was a big part of the $5 million a day.
And I want to talk about China, but just staying on this idea of the economy. On the eve of your inauguration, the stock market spiked. You called it the Trump effect.
It spiked because I was elected president. Well, it spiked because of anybody else. It spiked because they see what I'm going to do. They know what I'm going to do with the tariffs and everything else. And I think it's actually working out better than we anticipated. Did you see oil prices? Did you see gasoline is now below, in many cases, in many states, below $2 a gallon, $1.98, $1.99, $1.97?
Well, my question, sir, is when the stock market spiked, you said this is the Trump effect. When the numbers weren't so good earlier this week, you said it's the Biden effect. Are you only taking ownership of the good numbers and not the bad numbers?
Well, I think he did a lot of very bad things, and despite some of the bad things, we're overcoming them. But he was bad on the border. He was bad on the economy. We had the worst inflation in the history of our country. Look, Biden gave us the worst inflation in the history of our country. People It didn't matter what they made because they were losing their shirt because of costs. Now take a look at what happened. Oil is down, gasoline is down, groceries are down, eggs. You were the one that asked me. You asked me about eggs. It was the first week. I didn't even know anything about what were you talking about. Egg prices were so high you couldn't buy eggs. They didn't have any eggs. And they said Easter is going to be a disaster. Well, we had Easter at the White House, and we had thousands of eggs, and they were down 87%.
Yeah, a lot of that, of course, spike was because of bird flu. But when does it become the Trump economy?
Why do you say that?
Well, tell me,
we had the same bird flu as he had.
When does it become the Trump economy?
It partially is right now. And I really mean this. I think the good parts are the Trump economy and the bad parts are the Biden economy because he's done a terrible job. He did a terrible job on everything. From his auto pen, which I'm sure he knew nothing about some of the things he was supposedly signing, to immigration. You look at what happened with immigration, how bad it was. Think of it. We have murderers, 11,888 murderers. Many of them murdered more than one person. Think of that. And they're in our country. Now, we've gotten a lot of them out, and we know who many of them are, and we're on the hunt. But why would anybody do that? Why would anybody, who could do such a thing where they'd allow hundreds of thousands and even millions of people into our country who are criminals and murderers at the highest level? Who would do this?
But, sir, you acknowledge when you announced your tariffs, for example, the stock market dropped. It's been volatile. It has since gone up.
It is,
do you
but now
take
it's
responsibility
look at
for
today.
that? Yeah. Do you take responsibility when it drops?
Ultimately, I take responsibility for everything, but I've only just been here for a little more than 3 months. But the stock market, look at what's happened in the last short period of time. Didn't it have 9 or 10 days in a row or 11 days where it's gone up? And the tariffs have just started kicking in. And we're doing really well psychologically. I mean, the fake news was giving me such press on the tariffs. The tariffs are going to make us rich. We're going to be a very rich country.
So let's talk about the tariffs. And I want to ask you about something you said this week. Got a lot of attention. You were at your cabinet meeting. You said, quote, I'm going to quote what you said, maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30.
Yeah.
And maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks.
All right, all right. So first off, family, now let's have the conversation. I wanted to play part of the the interview. It was a long interview. You guys could go check out the rest. But I just wanted to play that part to have a conversation. First off, the economy. That's one thing affecting all of us right now. Whether you're rich, poor, middle class, it don't matter. Trump says we already made major progress in just 100 days. Now, whether you believe that or not, let's look at what he's talking about. He said under Biden, America was losing 5 to 6 billion every single day in trade. So think about that number. Imagine if you personally were losing $5 or $6,000 a day. You couldn't survive like that. And same thing goes for a country. And Trump says that loss mostly came from bad trade deals, especially with China. So he slapped 145% tariff on some Chinese imports. That's not a small thing, that's huge. And it basically tells China, you can't still do business with us. I mean, you can still do, sorry, family. You can still do business with us, but it's going to cost you big time. And it's like this: you run a business, you have a supplier who keeps sending you cheap stuff that undercuts your own product. You're losing money every time you let them in the door. So you charge them more or cut them off. And that's what Trump did. Cold turkey, he stopped the bleeding. And now China's trying to come back to the table. Why? Because they need the US market. We are the biggest consumers in the world. You cut them off and they feel it hard. But let's not act like that fixes everything overnight because nothing happens overnight. We still got inflation issues, right? A lot of people out here feel broke, not just because prices went up, but because wages didn't follow. And that is the part I want y'all to really understand is inflation hit 9% under Biden. Rent went up, groceries went up, gas went up, but did your job give you a 90% raise? Probably not. So even if inflation cools down to 2%, which is where we are now under Trump, you're still feeling the pain because your income never caught up. That's called affordability. Forget the stats for a second. Just ask yourself, can I afford my life right now in the same way I could in 2019? Most people will say no. And that's the real measure of the economy. And Trump is saying, look, I can't erase what happened, but I'm putting the brakes on it and I'm trying to reset things. Interest rates are still high, around 6 to 7% on a mortgage. That means if you want to buy a house, your monthly payments is way higher than it was under Trump's first term when rates were around 3 or 4%. So now he's trying to bring rates back down, make money cheaper to borrow, and help people buy homes, invest, or just breathe again. So now let's move to immigration because this was another big topic. Trump came out swinging. He said we got the best border in U.S. history right now, and called out the judges who are blocking deportations. He basically said, look, I was elected to get dangerous people out of the country, and activist judges are stopping me. That's what he said. So now here's where it gets controversial. He questioned whether people here illegally even deserve due process. He said due process is meant for US citizens, not people who cross the border illegally, because we know that the people on the left, which is the extreme Democrats and these activist judges, are basically commemorating together and coming together to collectively come and stop the Trump administration at a halt so they do not deport these illegal immigrants because they should be afforded due process. But when does a person that came across to another country illegally out of disrespect to the country and not following the rules of the country deserve due process? If anything, that should go to see the citizens who are abiding by the law, and out of respect, they should have always be given due process, right? And he said due process is meant for US citizens, not people who cross the border illegally. And whether you agree with that or not, here's the real issue. The immigration court system is jammed up. Over 2 million cases, I say cases, over 2 million cases backlogged. Some people wait years just to get a hearing. That's like catching somebody robbing your house, calling the cops, and being told, yeah, we'll deal with that in 3 years. Like what? So meanwhile, they're still living in your house, eating your food, driving your car. Trump point is we need faster enforcement, more judges, a clear system. Otherwise, people just keep coming in, disappearing in the system, and reappearing when it's too late. On top of it, it's also not fair to American citizens and US citizens because the simple fact is that time could be basically focused on the citizen that is actually law abiding and deserves due process and be able to get their argument heard in court and being able to be heard and get their situation, like I used for the house example, addressed. But instead, it's being time spent on basically addressing individuals who broke the law and came in the country illegally in the first place. They should be afforded to be heard in due process. Mind blowing to me. Next topic. I wanted to talk about term limits for a minute. This part caught me off in a good way. Trump said no one in Congress. Well, I'll put it like this. I'm not going to say Trump said. I believe that no one should stay more than 8 years in Congress. I'm not going to say Trump. And honestly, you got people like Nancy Pelosi, you got Bernie Sanders, you got Joe Biden. They've been in office for decades. Career politicians, same people, same problems, nothing changes. And imagine working a job for 40 years and never delivering results. And Trump, as we know, is not a career politician. He's not part of the establishment. And when it comes to being your typical politician who says one thing and do another thing and never really deliver results, that's why he's such a threat to the establishment of these career politicians like Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and Nancy Pelosi. So I wanted to have a conversation with you guys and just like I said, imagine working for 40 years and never delivering results. You'll be fired. But in politics, you can just keep getting reelected. Now, what I think is the idea, and this is just my idea and having a conversation, a thought provoking conversation. This has nothing to do with the interview at this point. Um, the idea of changing the presidency to 1 year, 8 year term. So 1 8 year term instead of 2 4 year terms. What you think, family? Comment down below. Because presidents can actually get stuff done instead of spending half of their time trying to get reelected. And then Trump couldn't do much in his first year. And then Joe Biden got elected. was then caused all this nonsense. But if Trump was still in office and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris never got in office, I believe we would probably most likely still be thriving in due time. And that's why I'm actually having a conversation, just having a conversation. This is my opinion of the presidency being 1 8-year term instead of 2 4-year terms, and then you got to get reelected, right? And that's real because the first 2 years you're just figuring things out. Year three, you're campaigning again. So when do you actually get to lead? And it's just something to think about. I just wanted to have a conversation with you guys. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Should Congress have term limits? Because I don't feel like these individuals in Congress should be um in there forever, basically. You know what I'm saying? They're longer than a president, and they're just individuals stuck on yesteryear. But and also, my question to you guys is: should presidents get 8 years straight? Um, and here's something deeper though. Um, I want to talk about legacy cost, right? Meaning, even if Trump is doing everything right now, we are still stuck paying for past decisions made by Bill Clinton, Bush, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden. Just like automakers, right? Look at the automaking industry. I'm gonna use that as an example. United States car companies promise pensions, healthcare benefits to all their workers back then. That's good, but it's expensive because we had the economy booming. So back in your grandparents' age, pensions was like it was the way out. You made it. You had the luxury of basically being set retirement wise because the company had so much money coming in that they can pay you to retire comfortably with a pension, right? And that's good and all, but it's expensive because then you got foreign companies going against American companies like Toyota. Toyota didn't have those costs. That's why they could sell cheaper cars and win because they didn't have to worry about paying pensions from legacy costs from your grandparents, and then the if they have been married, basically the wife of, let's say for example, your grandfather worked at Ford, right, or GM or Chevy, and they had so much money coming in back then, and the company promised them pensions, right, to retire comfortably and pay them to be set, right. And then also you have your grandma who is married to your grandpa, and then when the grandpa passes away, the pension benefits goes to grandma. But then when you have foreign companies like Toyota going against, say, for example, Ford or Chevy, who didn't have those legacy costs, which mean the luxury to give pensions. They didn't give pensions to their workers. They gave 401k, basic retirement benefits. That's why they could sell cheaper because they don't have to worry about paying individuals who were there before time when a company was booming better than ever. When a company first started with Ford, having pensions, they don't have to worry about Toyota doesn't have to worry about paying people that were part of their legacy when it came to building Toyota back then that are still alive when they promised pensions because they never initiated pensions in the first place, like Ford and Chevy for your grandparents, right? That's legacy costs. So now to apply that to the US government. We got debt, we got obligations, we got trillions of dollars going to programs we can't just stop overnight. That's what Trump means when he says we're dealing with a legacy of other administrations and we're playing catch up. And last thing I want to leave y'all with is this: presidents don't just affect the 4 years they're in office, they shape the next generation. Trump renegotiated trade deals from the 90s, like the North American Free Trade Deal with Bill Clinton, right? He kept tariffs in place that Biden didn't even reverse. And Biden made inflation decisions that Trump is now trying to undo. So what they do today, your kids are going to feel 10, 15, 20 years from now. What Trump does today or what these presidents do today are going to be felt for generations, is my point I want to leave y'all with. And that's why voting matters. It's not just about your life, it's about what kind of country your children are going to inherit. So if you made it this far, salute. You're the type of person who wants to understand what's really going on, not just get hyped by the headlines. Let me know in the comments. Is Trump fixing the economy or just spinning the narrative? Do you agree with the tariffs from China? And should we have 8-year terms for Congress and the presidency? Both of them. And make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your post notifications. And we're going to keep talking about politics, money, and power, but in a way that makes sense. Spread that peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate. Catch y'all on the next one, family. Peace.